Good afternoon, everyone.
Hello, everyone, says Geshe.
Ani ta susu ka sena janji chini chi nopton ramanda tani mena ke che umare go goyo ma. Ta nopton ramanda shayo na ti ma chayi che tala wigang na la chebra kari yore zna nga so witonga la witi la yam to kato yo ma re zare. Ti de yam to kato me ti nga so chaso nyomo to tokpan ramanda ti yam to kato l tini chi u ti. Tanda witi la sono tonga dewa ina ani ti nopton ramanda ma te za chatun re se ti re.
So just like we did last time, we're going to focus on the breath to start the lesson. Okay, so we're going to start meditating on the breath. And why are we starting to meditate on the breath? And the reason is because we want to pacify our discursive mind. We want to pacify our obsessive thoughts. So in order to do that, we need to focus on our breath. And the reason why our breath is an antidote towards our discursive thoughts is because the breath has no form, it has no shape, and it has no color. And normally our discursive thought arise in relation to our mind focusing or grasping to shapes and to form and to color. So that's why we're going to meditate on the breath, and this is going to help us pacify our discursive thoughts.
Tene tanda sonda tanga zo soma akwa te ni unza kyongo chimbon choki ni ta tiksiwi chimi ngoni ane nga zo sinje darja tsola ta ko dipo top dipo chini sonde yore ti sonyo te nga zo lami kwa jidrogo wa te kazo ngema sonchi kosala kuiga chonde jeni ane samba zombo chanshi ji senso gamato na acho go top kyobo reese te ching songsoa teni nipa te la ane kola drubin chopa yaksha ta kola chi Jichala Pia to Karanonita, dripping chopa, colon chopa yakshete, and it hero to Samba Zombo Chonji Senkaba to Samba Zombo to Jembe Senchivati, and yakshete is at the Zinis on your.
Also, we're going on the basis of this meditation, establish a motivation that is based on love, compassion, and the mind of enlightenment. And the reason is because here, as it's stated in the book that we are studying, which is opening the eye of awareness, the best way to make offerings, if we want to make the best type of offering, is to offer our good heart, so our mind of love, compassion, and the mind of enlightenment.
Ta somba po kuroka ani doba nonji nga tso ani nyamari rila ta chi semba somba chonshi ki semte la ani somo te tsi tonga chi na yapu yosare samudo te tere nga tso ani tan zindango matsi inge ti la ani chonshi ki sem la ani te tsi ta karma kashi tsa somo tongto na yapu yosare.
So this is the reason why today, before we begin this lesson, we're going to meditate for a few minutes and try to establish a good motivation based on a good heart, based on bodhicitta, on the mind of enlightenment.
Da chonchi ki sen zeya to namje nga so chonchi ki sen lawo yore, teba chimbo sen kye lawo yore, ani sen kye lawo yore, tiche sen kye zeya ta mimandra amambo le na kota tonda te rangi je ki sen de pa jachiri tonga tere. Ta sen kye lawo na sen zeya soso ku je ki sen de chi, kye lawo da ko jachiri tonga tere. Oti mato, keto mila chik chonshi ki sen zeya to teba chimbo sen kye zeya to sen kye zeya mindra yore. Ta teba chimbo sen kye zeya na tandri sen kye la kike kanza tala tepa chimbo waze mi kwanza tawa jise ki ko tepa chimbo si kieze. Ta janshi ki sen lo ki tere la, janshi sanji lana me piyon tabo zobi sanji lo jani, di tuanda nyayu lo zi bi jimse ki, ko la ni janshi ki sen zi mi tato tere. Ani sen kiye la ra ko jachiri tonga tike, 아니 샘피에자 다 gense트레마도 돈다 고지 찍찍바 찍교래 티제 샘피에지난다 정시지 샘지나 찍바래
Mm. And since we want to begin by establishing, by developing the mind of alignment or bodhicitta, let's try to figure out first briefly what bodhicitta means, because we use many synonyms to refer to this mental states. We can use the term bodhicitta, we can use the term of a Mahayana mind, we can use the term the awakening mind or the mind of enlightenment. In any case, whichever term we use to refer to this mental state, we're referring to the same mental state. And it's sorry, could you all turn off your mics so we don't hear any background noise? Thank you. And so the main meaning of this mind of awakening is to develop an expansive mind, to develop an expanded state of consciousness. Whenever we refer to the mind of awakening or the mind of enlightenment, we're referring to a mind. So mind refers to our present mind, and awakening means that our mind, the fact that our mind is expanding. So our mental mind, our mind is now being expanded, or an expanded state of mind. However, when we say, for example, the mind of enlightenment or bodhicitta, the mind of enlightenment would be the English translation for the Sanskrit term bodhicitta. It would mean the mind that aspires to attain enlightenment, right? But in any case, we're referring to a mental state that is an expanded mental state, a vast mental state.
다 샘피에지나 샘도 가서 숨시 처마 gel라 요래 처마 그 gel라 샘도 요래 샘코로 다 샘도 예 넘시지나 가르 던치리 고소 삼도 까티이나 가서 gel라 요요 이나 다텔라 대바침보 샘 차와라 가서 텔라 갑텐 거치 문텐 쇼지로 더 파카 그런 특이들라 닌송고죠 더 서조이나 특이니 당하로 저 gel은 송송나 아니 샘도 대바침보 샘게 차는 코로 샘도 가서 gel라 까티이나 요요 아래 소소 gel라 요비 샘티 아니 자치리 도와디디 그런 거길 아니 다 지도 특별히 조지 버려. 드니 저도나 드는 가서 생계해야 돼 참여했어.
So we all have a mind, right? This is common to all of us. We all have a mind. However, all of us, we do not have a Mahayana mind. So what can we do to turn our present minds into a Mahayana mind? Well, we need to eliminate the mental states that at the moment are an obstacle for the development of the Mahayana mind, and we need to cultivate the accompanying states or the causes of this Mahayana mind. So by eliminating that which obstructs the Mahayana mind and by cultivating that which favors the Mahayana mind, then gradually this Mahayana mind, our present mind, will turn into a Mahayana mind, and then we'll be able to call ourselves a Mahayana person.
다 가서 거기도 라니 집을체도 지니 대화 통도 지도 등원 선도지 세야게 때라 랑 신세세야 라니 싸와 침본서 제 여란다 소소 싸와 침본세와데 랑 신세세와다 다 디제신께 그 거기 연함에 봐 때리 당가서 랑 신세세야도 파카고 저래 단 특히달라 아니 돈바니 요레 젠돈 돈바도 정신 돈바세 단 돈바도나 돈일 길로 제순체 그 돈이 근데 다 아니 자와제 선비 선바지도 다라냐 이나라나 메비용도 조비 상지 타보 타나오 냠비 르니 드니든 특히니들에 거기에다 랑체 제버는 좀 전세들이 전세대 파카 디칼라 제순체 그 돈체 바지도 라니 정식 돈의 녀바니 보다 랑게 gel라 세키오티 아니 소소그 지지 샘데 티제 샘데 자서래 니코 티제 마 자서레스
So we might be asking ourselves, which are the unfavorable conditions towards the Mahayana mind and the favorable conditions of the Mahayana mind. The unfavorable conditions of the Mahayana mind is self-cherishing mind. So it's a self-centered state of mind where we value most of all ourselves. We basically only work for our own interest. It's self-centered, and that's the meaning of self-cherishing. We do not care about others. We only care about ourselves. So this is the main obstacle that impedes the development of the Mahayana mind, whereas the main condition that favors the development of the Mahayana mind is the two aspirations, and this is called the mind of the double aspiration. And this two aspiration is the aspiration to benefit all sentient beings by freeing them from their suffering. So this is one. And the second one is the aspiration to attain perfect and complete enlightenment. So if we cultivate these two aspirations, the aspiration to free all sentient beings from suffering and their causes, and the aspiration to attain perfect enlightenment, then these two aspirations favor the development of the Mahayana mind. So if we work on these two, on getting rid of the obstacles and developing the favorable conditions, then we will be able to develop a Mahayana mind.
다 가서 다 생코로도 가르려나 다 젠든다 제슨제 탕체기 던다 라냐 아니 라나메 베용다 조비 산지지 공포라난다 라냐 터티기 디와다 터나 냠비 lö트르다 라냐 조다 란 터티기 디와다 토고레디 이나용 라냐 터티기 디와 토피 체더 제슨제기 체드제니 라냐 디와 통도글로 다 심지 모니드 테레 선체 탐체기 체더 라냐 아니 터티기 디와디 아니 제가 타나 냠비 lö트르 디 땅가서 감게테레 선체 탐체기 체더 아니 랑게지 sunshake dinga sawi chedi nanda, sunshake petowi chedi ne karina, sosoke di sunshake donda nga, ani zobi sonji kumbu tabar shu, nyambi lotela, da sinki ngoni da teres.
Therefore, if we want to develop now the mind of awakening, when we develop our motivation, we need to think that in order to benefit all sentient beings, in order to free all sentient beings from their suffering, I am going to attain perfect and complete enlightenment. And it's the same if we say, in order to free all sentient beings from their suffering and their causes, I'm going to reach ultimate happiness. I'm going to develop ultimate happiness, because the state of full enlightenment is the state of ultimate happiness. So therefore, whenever we think of this, in order to benefit all sentient beings, in order to perfectly benefit all sentient beings, I'm going to attain perfect enlightenment. This in itself, this thought is the mind of awakening. We can also describe the awakening mind.
다 선제 탐체 라게 테레 동보니 가서 생계 동보니 선제 탐체 라데나 다다즈 요토 마레 디디 동보 생 종이 거서 동보 선제 찌르 문이가 되니 니 되니 쌈 되니 파자 치리 동보 소소 닝거 요기 선제 성거 문이 전에 그 등화 선도도 디와 정도 소소 kupе 로레 망기 기도 다 되니 파 자치리 되니 저거 되니 pen zambal에 되니 선제 탐체 어디니 지는 로 파자 기도도 테레 동보니 선제 탐체 라나 가서 르는 용토 마레 동보 선제 찌르가 되니 니라 성 되니 성 아시 치리 동인데 되니 당가서 안에 단다텔라 아니 선제 탐체기 체다 나로 그 지단의 주제난다 로규제난다 가리나자 디 탐체도 선제 탐체를 디와도이 체디 섬드니 니그 아니 자와제바 텔라테니 선제 탐체를 딩어 탐체 서 아니 선제 탐체기 딜라 디와 터티기 디와도 더버쇼 사가 상호더니 가와데 다 정시생 가와게 딜레오레스.
However, it's very unrealistic to think that we are going to be able to meditate on all sentient beings. Whenever we say for the benefit of all sentient beings, it's unrealistic to start thinking about so many sentient beings. So what we have to do is to first focus on one sentient being and say, okay, I'm going to attain enlightenment for one sentient being, for the benefit of one sentient being. And then you can say, okay, now for the benefit of two, for the benefit of three. And then gradually we can start expanding this object of benefit, and until we can encompass all sentient beings. And whenever we can do that correctly and really truly aspire for perfect and complete enlightenment for the benefit of all those sentient beings, then is when it really becomes the awakening mind, or bodhicitta.
딩가 탐치 소소고 문도비 딩가 탐치 산니 도비 디와 탐젠도나 찌마로 냐니 드니 탄 도비 디와 탐제 도고 쇼 선니 셀리온 용도 제아티 아니 다 가서 거마카체 거마치스 건난 리자라 디니지 건나.
That's it. So now we're going to meditate maybe for a minute or so, not long, just for a minute or so. We're going to think, okay, may all sentient beings be free from all of the suffering, and may all sentient beings have all the happiness and the causes of happiness. So for a minute, let's meditate on that. So let's begin.
그래서 내가 정식이 생제도 니 다지 뭐니 지지와라 다디 순제 탐제라 빙어 선도도 디와 dom도 굴려다 베스 점고 로 소소그 jel에 몽기 키우는 몽고 시식 팅게지 고요래 대기 어디 아니 뭐니 정식 생제라 killela 이나 단다 가솔 그티 르치마 와래 로 추즈니 동보 감이 거스다 아니 주마와 감니 지가 저거라 대리 다 나라솔 단다기 지수 다 교소 지지나니 정식세 gel에 용이나니 고타다 망기 뭔데 겨울에 거기 뭔데 겨면아요 아니 다 주마세 가서 감니 심피 주마세 가서 gel에 기요레스
Mm. So in order to develop the proper awakening mind or bodhicitta, this mind that feels the wish to free all sentient beings from suffering and the mind that wishes all sentient beings to be happy must arise naturally, must arise spontaneously. So if this is something that we can not do yet, we can kind of we can force this mind to appear, right? We can create, we can produce this thought, may all sentient beings be free from suffering, may all sentient beings be happy. And gradually, as we habituate ourselves with this mental state, it will begin to arise automatically, spontaneously. And that's when we will really be able to develop the spontaneous awakening mind, even if it's not a fabricated awakening mind.
다 아니 가서 기절라 정식이 세 아니 다지 비타브스메나 준주지야 기요디 다 가서 가르쳐는데라나 아니 상지기 시켜와도 아니 정식 생각이 리켜와 되는데 상지기 시다 가서 가르는데나 아니 제 순제기 또 쟁이가 다 정식 생각이야 되게 딜이야 쓴데 딜리아스 코소고리리아 쓴도디 코송 가르체나 노제 등아소요 다 디세티 소바티노즈나 소바티긴 리지도 거고 노제 땅아소 정식 셈바디 세노 쓰자디 아니 정식 셈바노 그 가르체요나 나요 티노제데 제기 제고 제기 이세가 아니 다 동자지요레 데 제시 첨버져와라 그더니 지송요레 어디잖아 야부요레스
And even if we're not yet able to develop the full expression of the awakening mind or the bodhicitta mind, even if we can just develop a tiny like glimpse of bodhicitta or a tiny glimpse of the awakening mind, we will gradually start to awake into the lineage of the bodhisattvas. And it's good if we can develop, as Shantideva says, in the way of life of the bodhisattva, or the bodhisattva's way of life, sorry, is that just we should develop the aspiration of trying to practice just like bodhisattvas do. So just like they do, I'm going to practice in a similar way.
다 가르잖아. 다는 다기 지니티 리돈 템빌리츠티 교메치비린들라 냠버면 제티들 자진다 아니 정제 선바 제시 좀 보자와라게 티서 다는 한군이 토니까 정제 선바가 딜리아 스송시 아니 정제 선바는지 아니 자와 가르치나 마요 티노제데 제기 센을 패스 지 제는 난 리도 머리사 도바큐니메니 타 제네니 정제 선바는지 가르치바 이나가이티 제기 이시 다 정신 선바는지 가르치레지나 아니 라운도 제니기노니 제소스 랑기 디와도 젠기 디와노니 젠기 디와 싸와 침보스니 젠도 소제레디 타니 안에 트레이닝 상티 제심시 타는 버세 토마엔실라 노바제와다 싸와니니 지미 페 공토 터 소소고 제니 고니지 아니 펜바 동케가 아니 리카징이가 머지가 리리아 츠요티 나요 티노제 지기 사니 니마리리지다 당자 템보샤고 레스타
Therefore, just like Shantideva says in the Bodhisattva's way of life, he says, today I've awakened into the Bodhisattva lineage. Therefore, whatever action these Bodhisattvas do, I'm going to try to act in a similar way. I'm going to try to lead. I'm going to try to have a conduct which is similar to the conduct of Bodhisattvas. And we might ask ourselves, what is the conduct of the Bodhisattvas? What are these actions that Bodhisattvas do? And these actions, this conduct that Bodhisattvas do, they mainly focus on the interest of others. They mainly focus on others' benefit. So if they have to choose between personal benefit and the benefit of others, they will choose the benefit of others before self-benefit. If they have to choose between one's own happiness and the happiness of others, they're going to choose others' happiness, and they develop full determination of not harming any sentient being, not even a small ant. So they always work for the benefit of sentient beings, and they try to avoid by all means possible harming any sentient being, even the smallest ant.
아가서 선실로 선실 버세 도마인시 담부 춘주인실로 진원에 전에 그 치와도 던지 맞제서 너바 맞제서 아니 상로도 동화라 도마 선실로 가르고 누도 너지게 자와도 시부쇼레스 파쇼 만데죠 너 디치나 선실로 너렌 디치나 선실로 펠레제가 페바도 너이가 나자도 야보 마시나 가르고 너 가르고 페하고 마로아 티리다 대시비 제들로 단다 용디노치나 먹이와 지금 나자도 시정도 먹이와 제들은 아니 리질리는 넘버 3 마기 넘버 G 이기 넘버 3 되게 딱 오늘 전에 그 랑리르 너레 제리르 너레 티티다 먹이와 제도 뽕고레 뽕고이 gen세기 아니 먹이와 제도 티노 서로 송샹도스.
Therefore, when we aspire to act like bodhisattvas, what we're actually aspiring to is to avoid harming other sentient beings, to try to benefit as much as possible other sentient beings, and to try to avoid harm other sentient beings as much as possible. And that's why we talk about the ethics that abandons the 10 non-virtuous actions, like we've seen in previous class. We try to abandon the three physical destructive actions, the 4 verbal destructive actions, and the 3 mental destructive actions. So this in total make 10 non-virtuous actions, or 10 destructive actions, which we try to abandon, since clearly when we act in any of these 10 ways, we not only harm others, but we also harm ourselves.
드네 가자마서 깨졌듯이 je tangi ene jonko deningo ni mashi tan woni magiwa tinso ni mashi izia tratati ane richi ke deningo ni mashi rochi sonshando richi ke tanda magiwa chano ni mas ane rochi sonshando ti tanga sono to ni kanyo ndreni ane magiwa chipo te sawa karal tindu ti ponje ke nyembo te karare tawre deni no ja shigo shore ti je demenya ni no ja jito wo ko magiwa chipo ni po de nyam dia trini ane nyam do shana peto chimbu yosare samso.
So relating to the previous class, I asked you guys whether you wanted to go back and review the 2 truths, or whether you wanted to continue where we left off in the 10 non-virtuous actions. And some of you said, okay, let's go over the 2 truths. And some of you said, let's continue with the 10 non-virtuous actions. So I thought about it, and then I thought, okay, I'll present the 10 non-virtuous actions in a way that we're going to understand, go to the root of those 10 non-virtuous actions, which are the afflictions, and try to figure out what antidotes we can apply towards those afflictions. But of course, in order to apply antidotes, we need to understand the 2 truths. So I thought I will present these 2 topics, the 2 truths and the 10 non-virtuous actions together, and I think it will be more beneficial.
아니 기도네 단디 정도는 문이지나 기와 지송아 요래 아니 정식이 생겨 나오자던데 몸보 송아 요래 디마소네 단단디 기와 치 카테가 먹이야 저도 송샤 요래스 다티 먹이와 저도 송고비 견세 가르레즈 가서 송로지 동나.
So we can think about the 10 non-virtuous actions in, let's say, in a negative way or a positive way. So we can talk about the 10 virtuous actions, which will be the opposite of the 10 non-virtuous actions. However, in the text, they present first the 10 non-virtuous actions before the 10 virtuous actions. And it's important to think why. Why are we presented with, let's say, the negative sides, with what we have to abandon, what we have to avoid?
Ketan jikten nala nga tso chiyo maa diawa ina yung maa diawa pasho drat kate chawa la pasho drat ika nipa chasu shitowa ina ane maa diawa la ane soso lo kikatawa ka peto chimbo yore di pasho dawu ka telan tsecha kandi yomo kola maa kandi yomo di chasu uto shiwa ina ane nasho ne maa diawa ina kate chawa lilha yore di yowa nongshi tanda ngara soka dran ngoni ta cholo yo mara nonge ani nyomo tozo linga eso pupi nyomo tozo tan magiwa chabotere di magiwa chabote yapo chi ngo zena di kate ta kandi chago yo me di hako tondo res o di isani tanda magiwa chabote di no sawa chin songsha res.
So the reason why first we're presented with the 10 non-virtuous actions is because if we think about, let's put an example, like in a mundane example that we can understand. If we, for example, go to war and we want to win over our enemy, we need to understand our enemy, right? We need to understand what type of strategy they're going to use. We need to understand what weapons they're using, and we need to understand the psychology of the soldiers we're trying to, or of the enemy, right? And only when we understand the way that the enemy acts, we will be able to win over the enemy. So similarly, here in a Dharma context, the enemy is not outside, the enemy is inside. And the inside enemy are the afflictions and these 10 non-virtuous actions. So if we're able to identify to familiarize and identify correctly the workings of these afflictions and 10 non-virtuous actions, then it will be much easier for us to win over our internal enemy.
네 단다 가서 네 야와름 부체 그 근디 동보 근디 단다 그 집주주 바로 티 근디 동보 야와 긴데tum 야와 긴데tum 그 송지여래 잔 노그 뇽몬도 더 제거래 마도 마서 추 로교 제와 소강가랑 그 제제 다 다우무니 그 뇽몬도 더 마치니 아니 딜리 신비 그 지니 다지 소소 세년담도와도 지 근디 그 제도 녀래 제바 로교 제바 이나 아니 지 아니 노고를 니팔라 쇼고쇼스 요팔라 르 노고 동안노제레 도나메게 찬도레세 티티 단데콜라 잔뇨문도 터체발라 뇨모비 다트 모소고 이긴세키 아니 링아이서 그 마기와 쳐도 티송샤레스
Geshe la gonda tanda dra susu dra nyomo res di duma tugna karichagi res nye ko tsumasu.
마레 나소 단다치 용노주 제야지 여러와 디 롱주 제와다 소소 그 지지가 장문이도 소소 그 지지 뇨문도 서드레스 도자 콘도 나제 단다 무기와 남레스 디 메바조이 토실 마토니 또 마임비 그 소소지 제년단도와도 계단도와도 던디기 제가 로주 제바이나 아니 지 쇼고용 게들라 알라다 노고쇼 파통하노지 도다요 말에 페도요 말에서 다 뇨문도 또 마지바 샤지바서진 체년도 디 쇼고 초즈니파나 라노고토와 토리 총세 티 야기네도 티송요레스.
Listen. So there was a great teacher, the first Dalai Lama. Now we are in the 14th Dalai Lama. Now we have the 14th Dalai Lama, right? But the first Dalai Lama, he said that there is no point in trying to do other types of practice if we're not able to subdue the afflictions in our own minds, because the afflictions in our own minds are the real enemy. So if we try to win over external enemies without trying to pacify internal enemies, then it will make no sense. We won't be able to do so.
아서 마기와 쳤던 거니면 전에 만나 로타카들 하요래서 마기야 저리는 좀 먹고 와치라 대대 가서니 마기와 노니 tombo 리치 마기와 성요래 나기 마기와 지이치 마기와 성고 노니 단다 로타세와 티카들레데도 다 로타지 기테레라 카르요래라나 쳤던 로퍼타와제틀 리니요래 아니 요발라 메퍼타위 로타치토 메팔라 마임발라 임바 존도피 로타제 로타텔 리니요네 단디 마기와 치카노고 로타제야타 지 리겐지 메파타와도 아니 컨트롤사 메파타와도 지 제톤제오 메파타와도 소도 로타제 데 로타데 니바시 무슨 그랬어.
So if we go to where we left off, we were looking at the 10 non-virtuous actions. So this is page, if you have the text, the PDF, the PDF of Opening the Eye of Awareness, we're on page 57. At the end of page 57, we're looking at wrong view. So we were looking at the 10 non-virtuous actions. We already saw the 3 physical non-virtuous actions, the 4 verbal non-virtuous actions, and out of 3 mental non-virtuous actions, we saw 2 of them. So now we still have to go through wrong view. So when we talk about wrong view as a non-virtuous actions, basically there are different types of wrong view. There is a wrong view of negating something that exists, or asserting the existence of something that doesn't exist. So this is a type of non-virtuous actions. However, here, when we're talking about wrong view, it refers especially to negating the existence of the law of causality, negating the existence of the 3 jewels, and negating the existence of rebirth.
단디노 그 로타도 다 먹기와 치포티 공사 신기 먹기야 저것도 말해 시대오 좀 말해 소소그 길라 랑기 길라 먹기와 저도 요도 매 따티지 소소그 길라 로타 요도 매 따티지 소소 길라 나서 노서 요도 매 다트니 소소그 계자시 이거서 다저 참아 즉석 수 요도 매 아니 소치바 마치바 렘바 로열체바 소소그 제도 마치 랑게 랑 알아서 랑게 랑을 잠지치네 랑게 지치 뇨모토서 단다 먹기와 저보티 아니 카테 자고 요라마토 마젠라 치도 자요 말해 rāngā ngā sō nē lōpē lē tēn tō tā ndō nō sō nō sō rē dānyā dāgī ngō yī, dānyā dāgī dāyō yī sō rē sō sō kō ngō chō pōnyō tō sō sō yī tī, sō sō kō jī jī nyōmō tō sō tō sō sō kō anī mē pā sō kō yō rē sī tī tī tā nā nī kō kō lō tā tā rāngā jī rō jī rā mā tō yī ngā lā pā chī tō jē yō mā rē lō tā.
However, something that's important when we're going over these 10 non-virtuous actions is that all of the 10 non-virtuous actions are referring to one's own 10 non-virtuous actions. We're not referring to others' 10 non-virtuous actions. So we should focus on what types of wrong views do I have? Do I have am I a covetous person? Am I a malicious person? Do I lie? Do I divide? Do I create disharmony with my speech? Do I offend people with my speech? Do I talk senseless speech and gossip about others all the time? Do I kill other sentient beings directly or indirectly? Do I steal from others? Do I have a wrong sexual conduct or have sexual misconduct? So it's oneself who should analyze through the study of these 10 non-virtuous actions, we should analyze our own conduct and not start thinking, oh, this person doesn't do this and that person does that and the person does that. We shouldn't get involved. We shouldn't care what other people do. We should try to focus on what we do and try to fix our own conduct, because just like Buddha Shakyamuni says, one is one's own enemy and one can be also one's own protector.
Kandi koro lota koro katindo aina ta tombo lota tala yon ko lota kisa ke jeta la sanyo gore je samba gerwa thati tji guda je ji gore tani samba ji gore tani gerwa ji gore tin thati ji gore lota ze ta gel ti uti je gore ta to tingi ne magya soma ji bare soma she yure kandi no la je ji na ta nandi lo da lota na je gim gi chu so tans samba ani gidi me partawa tans 다 gerwana 용도 티고로 sambo 도와드레 타티나 아니 팅고니 타체 바드레스다 제게치 sam바그니 ger와가삼 타티그제 다지 먹기와 차소 리롱용수 조발라 어디 제대 연심해지 총그래 녜마들 총요를 찍바치게 시유지레 온들레 오타가로 송샹도스
Like you probably already saw, in order for an action to be complete, there are 4 factors that have to be present. So we need to have the factor of the basis, the factor of intention or thought, the factor of execution, and the factor of completion. So these 4 factors have to be present in every single action for the action to be complete.
Nindone lotatla tanatinona je ta giso ta jezina pajo chejela utre giwa to magiwa ta chedone giwa to magiwa la jiterechi giwa to magiwa ze na chujoge chugi tanjire mason jitembe tanjishena nöchi to penji pento cheji to nöchi je niora nöber chebi ki chukoyin batala magiwa la deore pember chebi ki chukoyin batala giwa la deore ta zote nangaso gito magi zeata chi chugono ga tanjire ma nojan genda ngaso jitege to cholo pa chi nöbiri jiore pembiri jiore nöbiri koyin batala magiviri re pembiri koyin batala giviri ta ti onda kala gito magi zeake chuto thoni de tires.
So one more thing I'd like to add is that we're talking about non-virtuous actions. We can talk about virtuous actions and we can talk about non-virtuous actions. This is Dharma terminology, right? But if we in conventional vocabulary, we would use perhaps beneficial actions and non-beneficial actions, for example. Those actions that are considered beneficial, they are virtuous actions, and those actions that are not considered beneficial or that are non-beneficial, they are non-virtuous actions. So this is how we should understand the difference between a virtuous actions and a non-virtuous action.
아니 다 삼반나 김기 메버타발론도 삼바도 수조고 송노도 기엄기 메버타와세들이 다 김기 메버타와세야 등아선들이 레데레스 페나 아니 지라 링다 지 세니 라이나 라인다 선진도 소제니 소제나 디금 제불 딩어 요 마레 소제나 온 제불 딩어 요 마레 선노 레사티 gem기발리 아니 제불 딩어 메파타 따서레 디디 로타티 레서레스 페나가서 노제 몽보 예레지 잔다 세야도 냐 세야도 든디지나 소소가 자이치도 세레디 텔세야라 디파치 케요 마레 섬사티 아니다 제 먹기발리 오네펠리 제불 디파 메파 딩어 메파타 따서레 디디 지디 로타치 세레스
Mm. So if we look at the text, it says that wrong view, the basis of a wrong view is a virtuous or non-virtuous phenomenon. So we've already established the difference between a virtuous action and non-virtuous actions. Then the thought, it says it's is a motivation to view virtue and ill deeds as non-existence, to view cause and effect mistakenly, etc. So here the first one, it says to view virtue and ill deeds as non-existent. This means that, for example, an example of this might be if we, for example, kill an animal and we feel that killing an animal is not non-virtuous actions, and therefore, as a result, we won't experience suffering. This would be a wrong view. And this is something that is very common in society. We think that there is there is nothing wrong, that it is not unvirtuous to kill, for example, a bird or a fish in order for us to eat it. And this is a wrong view.
정식이 생겨 선식이 제들 지 인도의 자와지 검jo 든디 제와라 페토요 마레스 라올리 페마레 젤리 페마레스 gemba 동알라요 페토지요 마레스 아니 가서 나주시나 gemba 동나 롱춘 좀 마레 롱춘 좀 문도 와서 gemba 동가 강가 아니 방고 창도도 서 든디 라살라이나요 아니 제기와리 지워 디와메 반종이까 아니 로탈레 우레스.
However, we can have the opposite view. The opposite view would be that if we practice virtuous actions, these actions bring no benefit. Like, for example, there is no benefit in meditating in bodhicitta. There is no benefit to think to develop this mental state. There is no benefit to practice generosity with a bodhicitta mind because, for example, it says that when we practice generosity, the result of generosity is wealth. However, when I practice generosity, I have less and less money. Therefore, I'm becoming poorer and poorer. So there is no result of wealth due to practicing generosity. And believing this is a wrong view.
네, 당아서 니 마치 신론나다 신론나다가로 디지선 미 폼보 미타톤 자라 폼보 미타톤 메바서 자라 틸란존르레스 디 치만지 기완도 가지 열 말레스 다 소소 셔서이지가 폼보도 밀타사데 지조사데 디니 열 말나 아니 기와 치만메 빌로타세데 레용레스.
However, we can also, another type of wrong view is to think when we die, we just disappear, just as our body is dead and then it's burnt, incinerated, then it would just disappear. So there is no past life, there is no future life. This is also a wrong view, the wrong view that negates past and future lives.
다 딜라테니 드는 알소 진지테 신들라 솔로 토나요지 다치 젤라 로바치와도 펜바도는 알렌 조아 고문도 아니 가로 거리 카로지마도 민두 선바도 드니 지금 너바치나요 지금 뭐바 등어치 지금 오죠 말에 신들라 그마치 작바죠 가르치나요 소설지 저번저 야보라레마도 지 강아지 유교 말에서 드니가 손로 토나요 로타 차세리스.
Also, there is another type of wrong view, that is the wrong view that negates the law of causality, meaning that there is no relationship. It's the view that believes that there is no relationship between the actions that we do and the results that we experience. Therefore, we believe, for example, that if we help other people, if we try to be kind to other people, that this brings no beneficial result as happiness in the future, and that if we hurt other people, if we steal, if we do actions such like this, that this won't bring suffering in the future. This is also a wrong view.
다티에 가서 던지지 만다 몸부지 영화다 다소 다른 거는 오래라나 소소게 젤라 메시피 못바지요 가리나 진리게 노이도 다치 디디게 나자도 메시피 못바지요 못바티 원기 아니 담다 겐지도 뇨타강가 티조레스 메시피 못바티 가리나 마시피 원기 제바레스.
So the main affliction that provokes these sorts of wrong views, as the text says, is any of the three, but specifically is obscuration, meaning ignorance. So it's the obscurations created by ignorance, this mind that doesn't know, that does not understand, that creates these wrong views.
다 가서 메시피 못 봐서야 돼 가르레지나 또 기동 가서 아니 용링노 제나네 메시피 못 봐들 마리파 그래 되니 소치니 아니 못 봐일러 그래 다 저때 나를 존지때 찍고는 계자시나 소소가 질 파죠 이렇게 니리 메시 봐지래 메시피 용 다 자와 가르제나요 메시피 용게 제자니 디 메시 봐들 가서 용링니 제나 마리파세 미탈레 이나 돈다때 가서 질라 파체 레이레 디 메시 봐지 가리나 지 니리 나오자 메시 봐지 어디 공디 제바레스 메시피 용게 제바레스
In the text, sometimes we will find different terminology in English, right? We might see obscuration, we might see confusion, we might see ignorance. However, whichever term we refer to, we're talking about, if we talk about ignorance, we're referring about a mental state that does not understand the reality as it is, or that is unaware of the reality as it is. So ignorance is spoken of in these terms.
다 메시피 못 봐도 서로치 발라 가르쳐 버려서 다 나선 걸 아니 고사 때문에 좀 좋게 돈번에 대만이 계셔 대만이 넣으셔도 대만이 넣으셔 발라 10 선노 돈바 로주체 텔레테니 아니 소소게 지금 메시피 못 봐도 세고 쇼레스 이니 대만이 넣으셔도 다단된 걸 오고이 김세 쪼도 티레 티디 대만이 넣으셔 양고 마타나 아니 무기와 첩포티 자와니 메파서 또 말해.
So if we want to get rid of ignorance, which is what we want to do, right? If we want to apply an antidote to get rid of ignorance, we need to understand the two truths. And that's why His Holiness the Dalai Lama, at the beginning of this book, he begins by teaching the two truths, the ultimate truth and the conventional truth. If we need to understand it, we need to study, we need to understand them, we need to study them, and we need to meditate on them, because this is the only way to get rid of ignorance. There is no other way to get rid of ignorance.
다 대만이 이렇게 terellang 가서 도도 덴바도 그저 덴바세 시우래 그저 덴바세 terellang 가서 지다 지 타타리리 몽보지 무근 통화도 나이 고아도 라비레아 거다 아니 지다 저저자 소마도 그저 덴바세 되는 딜레 때는 가서 도자 콘트롤 가게 마루파서 지 디몽기 ત니 지 리근 거니 지 소처 바도 마진발렘 바도 마게 거니 저 차마스서 차소데 그저 데미 나장거니 아니 또 총마데 강마데 단 크로안델라 지 라운드 제 통실로 너버치비기 추드 총마데 그저 덴바 텔라테니 마조 쇼레 도도 덴바 제와텔라테니 디고 도쇼 파쇼케지 니초 통제 세제게다 아니 다메 토비 시로도 레니 디가 카테데 되오지 디디 코니 지 아니 코알마 스티비 넘바시레 지금 코알라 도이 넘바치 아니 그저 데니가 나장거니 드니 로요서레스
So when we talk about the two truths, we talk about the conventional truth and the ultimate truth. Conventional truth refers to everything that we experience daily, like all the objects, everything we see with our eyes, everything we hear, everything we touch with our hands, everything we taste, everything, all objects that we're into contact with daily, these are conventional truths. And when we are in relation to these objects, afflictions arise, attachment arises, and anger arises, and ignorance arises, because the way we perceive these objects does not actually coincide with reality. So every one of these objects has an ultimate reality to them. They have a conventional reality to them, and they have an ultimate reality to them. And on the basis of that ultimate reality, when we understand it, we will develop the wisdom that understands selflessness of person and selflessness of phenomena, or the wisdom that understands emptiness in brief, and the wisdom that understands emptiness and ignorance. They apprehend the object in opposite ways, meaning that they understand the way of existence of those objects in opposite ways. And it is that wisdom that is able to get rid of the ignorance that perceives incorrectly, that mistakenly perceives the objects.
당아서 드니 영화도 그저 덴바세와 틀라 데니지 도자 콘도 가게다 교강가도 영화도 가래라나 그저 덴바스야 지들 고셔져 버렸어. 그저스야 지동 덴바스야 지 니시 버려. 대니녀도 더 없어졌어. 그좀스야도 덴바니녀도 겨울에 다 그좀스야 때 가서 봐서 그 돈바도 가발라서라 군조도 지다트라 소말 그저자. 덴바스야 덴사를 가는 못 되어서나 미시비 모바 마르비 못 되미진세지 그저 덴바라 테레스. 코로 자위 덴사 코로 루천절로 마르비 못 되미진세지 올코 그좀 덴바스야 때 가서 다시티 겨울에스.
yen la gonda tanda demba gi jashe nyeko tsuma son ta misheba gi demba dzigi yoreba kunzo se
dire kazom demba se kazom demba se shindo kazom se da chikshye gore demba se da chikko gore kazom se da pasho ta zida to raja thoma la nga so mugun thwa to labi nyo to thoma da kazom la demba se ke tere la mishi pi mo pi ki yor le dembi jin se ki demba la mishi pa mo pa mishi pi mo pa ji ta mishi pa ji ra mishi bi shi pa ti ki yor le dembi jin se ki ko la kazom demba la da lo chinjo lo ngol le de re ma to le chinjo ma lo pa le yong ta pa ji ngol de yo ma le chinjo lo ji ngol de re la ta.
lesson. So we've said that conventional truth or conventional reality, which are all these objects we're in contact with, are the basis for afflictions to arise. So we have to try to understand what is the link between the interaction with all of these objects and the arisal of afflictions, right? And in order to do that, we need to understand the etymology of the word conventional truth. So in Tibetan is kunzop demba, right? So it's two words. So we have kunzop and we have demba. So it would be like conventional truth, right? Or conventional reality. So the way to understand, one way to understand the etymology of conventional reality or conventional truth is to understand conventional as all of these sense objects that we're constantly in contact with. So everything that we see, everything that we hear, everything that we smell, everything that we taste, everything that we touch, all objects are included within conventional, within this term. And truth or reality refers to the fact that ignorance perceives all of these objects as existing inherently. So let's say, in other words, as existing it perceives these objects as having a reality that in fact they don't have, because ignorance perceive all of these objects as truly existence, as really existence, as if they have a true reality to them. So that's why conventional reality. So ignorance is perceiving all of these objects in a distorted way, not in a correct way. And this is what ignorance does.
Tene da nga so kise sondo da ya ni mombo sondo to maso de ni ta jima nga so riri ni ngol ta ji nga so senje ko lion ta da senje koro do do ma jiyo ma ti yo la senje ga ni la cha che mombo jin song gore to so kali kali ta ta da yo de ma ni ji go ni yo kali kali nyom da ani tene do sha na pa jin ri min do so so jin do ani ta ani pa jin nga so kise sondo do to yo na ani to no ro ji.
So now the time is gradually over. We have a few minutes and we're gonna leave these last minutes to answer questions. However, today we weren't able to cover a lot, but what we have covered is the development, how we can develop the mind of enlightenment. And I think it's important that in every class we take some time to develop this motivation to try to eliminate the unfavorable factors of the awakening mind and try to cultivate the favorable factors of the awakening mind, and also continue to go deeper into these two truths. So now we're going to go through the questions. I think there is already a question in the chat by Rika. So I'm going to read it in English and then I'll translate it for Geshe. So Rika says, beneficial or not beneficial for whom? So this, we're talking about virtuous and non-virtuous actions. I think to decide what is beneficial for others is not so easy. The same action can be beneficial for one being, but harmful for another. How do we decide whose benefit is more important? Not ours, I understand that, but is benefiting humans more important than animals, for example? Children more than adults? Is there a way to determine that? Okay, so that is Rika's question. I'm going to ask that to Geshe. That's what Geshe. Dagi Geshe-lagi gewa tami gewa ki kebar chiwe kabla zo nebe chawa dimi gewa cha ani pembe chawa di gewa gewares gishela songimbas kinayang tandang azu chawadi chawachigi michigla pengi yosare mi shemba chig nögi yosare chawachigla cheza di ngazula kande dan tu gires ra kain senna michigla nö michigla pen nga chawadi chena pensare yagare yamena machina yaga insare di chigche 아니 미카실라 베나 다 셈첸기 바로라 개발 여러베 베나 차와치글라 미 셈첸 미 셈첸 라페 이나야 둔돌라 미페 둔돌라 네 덴데 이나 미 미텐조 둔돌레 켈체아르베스 디체네 가조 둔돌라 네바 체나야 밀라페나 체나 디서베 오 덴데
그때 맞서 아니 더와 제다 아니 좀 디노상고는 더리 디노세 지어라 디노는 마 상지 코로고마 제반저래라 가자지도 고바지도 드니니 소요래 가비 제바지도 드리 제바 가자 치와이나 고바요나 니코 자고레스 페나 아니 다지 맞서 맞지 페샤지 로바지 제니 딜라 테니 홈 미디가 뇨다 첨부 로강을 첨부 제와이나 그것도 펠리티 티자고레스 소요래 디디 가자도 고반일 때니 오늘 파쇼도 너바 첩선 저는 나쇼도 페토나요 그 페토와도 되 자고레스 페토와도 마자와이나 쇼치로 너바 첩은 로이나 디그 너니 너바 페발리 너바 신도레 디디 아니 산지 저된데고 가자도 고발을 따고레스 가자 치고요나 아니 고바요나요 고리지 자레스 다 가자 메나 가자 춘주 요 거스 메바지 요나요 춘주 와도 메바이나 고바도 도고레스 디디 너바 첩은 로이나 자샤레스
Tagin geshela gibe mila pecha yaria di pecha yar direbe disunimbe
배샤야메야 통을 지시면고 이나다 직발에 담마실 배샤자 여러지로 배차 고문 뭐지서 여고 이나 콜 이안이 디게 때는 거지 니다 도쿄 제와도 리가 남다 제바이나 디 소속 하고 이나 디돈 마야나 야그레스 콜 카트 배샤 필레디 딜라 때는 너바치 무시티우레스 띵알라 동시죠 또 못일라다
So to answer this question, we have to go back to the Vinaya, right? The Vinaya are the texts that establish the way we should practice ethics. So here Buddha Shakyamuni makes a difference between the restricted action, so restrictions and need. So these two things, restrictions and needs. So sometimes there are certain types of restrictions, like we shouldn't do these types of actions, right? However, even though there might be a restriction in some sort of conduct, if there is a specific need in that context, so that means it means that the need is greater than the restriction, then we should perform the action. However, if there is a small need and it's a big restriction, then we shouldn't favor the need or prioritize the need over the restriction, right? So for example, if we are there is no restriction in lending someone money. So you can lend someone money. However, you know that that person is going to do negative things. So it's going to harm other people. It's going to use your money, to harm other people. So in that context, in that situation, even though there is no restriction to lend money, you would choose not to lend that person money because that would harm other people.
네, 단에 단들에 가서 네마네마를 로지지요. 그때 상지 요티니 너고는 요이사 난가망가말 아니 다 저거 뭐쯤부터 그때 잔선으로 저지 쯤부터니 되니 다이 잔서 바로 로서도 온것도 저러 롬보시 렌도서라. 그때 고소 멍아잔도 요레스. 멍아잔도는 포켓서도 롬보시 츠키니 츠레우티 랑갈레티 디노 뭐지고 뭐나 동동시야 뭐지고서 그거 선 담마 지자그치 거기도 세잖아. 아니 자라칸가서 동 롬보시 소망하러 통도서래서 그 세야가 도시지 이래스. 디고서 디노 뭐지가 하거니 다 소설랑원에 좀 뭐세가 비팔레나요 게민도 이나다 만나 동도도 마세바이나 디가 뭐니 소마세자서래 디코로 그니바에 좀 사사래 디마테 아니 고두바 좀 사사 뭐 다지게 그치 고가가 소도 셔너서 고로고 디바 좀 사사래서니 소소그 기와도 다 소리토네 마저 만나 동도 세샤래서 디디코 만나도도 세발라테니 소노시도 사이레제 근데 로지 송한도 어디노제레서 가자도 구발 따고 요레세다.
Mm. There is a story that reflects the answer to this question. It says that years ago there was a group of merchants, a group of 500 merchants, and they were traveling abroad in a boat to another island to do some business, right? And apparently in that island they were gonna find lots of precious stones. So they were going to do very good business because they were going to get these precious stones and then sell them and then get a lot of money. So they all went on this boat to get these precious stones. However, in the same boat, there was one of the merchants who had a plan to kill the 499 other merchants so he could keep all of the precious stones of the other merchants, and then he would be really, really rich, right? However, there was one person in the boat, one of the merchants knew that this other person wanted to kill the rest of them. So he thought, okay, I'm going to kill the killer. I'm going to kill the person who's planning to kill the other merchants. Why? Because I like that. I don't care if I'm going to accumulate a very heavy misdeed. I don't care if I'm going to accumulate very heavy karma. Because if I do this action, this merchant won't accumulate karma of killing 499 people in the first place, and also these 499 people won't die. So in that way, I will protect the merchant, the killer, and I will protect the person all the people he intends to kill. So it says in the story that he killed the person and he accumulated the negative karma of killing the person in order to save that person from their negative karma and to save the other people.
젬바 요. 단다
아,
찔레시나.
다 직도이네 두수 소소 ngazo tiwadi zinda jema tamaina
오레레. 띠아도.
la laso.
지마 아니 당가서 티세 정도노라. 아니 지마 가서 남경아 트리거서 저와도 니념도 찌기찌기 젠저데요. 다 지마 저와서는 하루다. 같은 코로소니 도바카리오나 같은 야로로치나 야분도. 아니 그가 도반들인들이 요스나 같은로는 가서 전적인 적이지나 안 디젤 페쳐버 이러면서 올 저와서나 저와하루다.
Laso.
이니 가서 다시 들래. 이와근도 용달라마도 루미시 비팔라노 사도노지 요테로도니 도지 조기 공본이 더쇼.
So I think there's one more question that hasn't been answered. So since the time is over, if you can write that question in the WhatsApp chat, and then next class, which is next Wednesday, we will resolve that question. But in general, perhaps it would be better if you just ask the questions directly. So as I'm explaining things, if a doubt occurs, you can ask the questions, because if you leave the questions towards the end, then sometimes we don't have time to answer all of the questions. So next time, just answer your questions directly. And with this, we're going to finish today's class. Thank you very much, everyone. Geshe has already dedicated the merits for the class, and we'll see each other next Wednesday.
Yes, 다시 들래.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, Anna.
You're welcome.
Thank you.
Thank
다시
you.
들래.
Bye-bye, everyone.
谢谢，
拜
拜拜，
拜。
谢谢，
谢谢你。
谢谢给续啦。
你叫什么名字？我不知道你的名字。
我的名字是 Perry 国庆，
Perry. Oh, yes, very good to know. Perry.
拉手，
谢
这样，
谢。
谢
你们这
谢，
样，就
你们
来
这样。
个，来走。